Hi everyone and welcome to a new episode of the Global AI Notes. In this episode we will talk about evaluating, monitoring, continuously improving generative AI applications. Hey Will, welcome to the Global AI Notes show.
Hello, thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, super cool. A few weeks ago you were sick, we scheduled you, but I'm super excited that you could join today. Can you introduce yourself and tell us what you're going to talk about?
Certainly. My name is Will. I'm a product manager on the responsible AI tooling team within AI platform. And I'm going to share how to monitor your generative AI applications in production, as well as evaluate them before production.
Perfect. Um, I would say let's dive straight into it. For the audience, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and I will ask them to Will if they pop up. So I will add your screen to the stream, and the stage is yours.
Thank you. So what I will show today will be the ability to perform an evaluation on your generative AI model, and then mitigate potential harms, and then monitor them in production, and finally continuously improve that application to ensure that your application is behaving responsibly. There are three phases in the enterprise generative AI lifecycle. There's ideation, there's building, and there's operationalizing. Today, we're focusing on the creation of a flow and an evaluation, and then comparison of flows, and then operationalizing through model monitoring, and then continuously iterating and improving upon that application. I'm excited to share this in Azure AI Studio, which is in preview for anyone to try. You can develop an application in Playground, PromptFlow, or the GenAI SDK, and then you can perform evaluations on your test data, and then monitor on live production data. Today's use case is a retail company chatbot. And so I want to ensure that I'm mitigating some potential harms, such as harmful or offensive answers, ungrounded answers, or simply low quality replies. I want to ensure that this application is staying within the guardrails that I establish, and I want to monitor this at scale in production. Let's jump straight to a demo. Here you see the beginning of the story. This is prompt flow. You can think of this as an execution graph for your large language model application. You can see you have inputs and outputs, and then a series of nodes in this graph. And I'll walk you through these. The first is the ability to extract the intent of a customer. So there's a prompt here that tells the model how to extract the customer intent and feed that into a search later. And so once you've extracted that intent, you are then able to retrieve customer information using Azure Cognitive Search. And this is taking customer-specific context for your chatbot. And then you're able to retrieve product information from your product catalog. And so the two of these nodes are really important to give contextual and accurate responses for your chatbot. Then it will format retrieve documents, and it feeds it into a large language model to determine the reply. And here you see it's running on a GPT-3.5 Turbo, and it has a prompt. And these come pre-populated for you, by the way. So it tells you system operation messages and guardrails for how it should answer questions, and specific information on safety. And then it will give important instructions and refuse to answer out-of-domain questions. And again, this is really important to ensure that your model is acting in accordance with your business goals. So let's say that I have this flow. I'm happy with it. I have chatted with it and kicked the tires a bit. I would like to run an evaluation. So I would like to evaluate this before I run it into production. So I'm defining my evaluation and my runtime, and then my question and answering. And I have two different flows that I'd like to evaluate. This is the one with multiple data sources, the customer information and product information. And then I'm choosing a set of metrics. And let's talk through this. So I think one of the most important ones for this application is groundedness. You can think of this as contextual accuracy. It measures how well your model answers align with information from your user-defined input source. The next one is relevance. Are these answers relevant to the given questions? Additionally, I'd like to measure for coherence, which is how coherent it is, and fluency, which is the language proficiency. And what it's doing under the hood is running a GPT-3.5 Turbo, and that is acting as an evaluator model. So research has shown that these models are quite good at evaluating, almost on par with human evaluators. And so it will provide scores and provide qualitative aspects to your evaluation. And so here I can choose a data set. As you can see, there are a lot of data sets here. And I will perform a mapping. And this mapping is really important across your flow, your evaluation, and your monitoring. Most importantly, starting with the basic requirements, the inputs and the outputs, the query or the answer. And I think crucially, then you would have the fetched documents. And this is the user-defined context. So this is the fetched documents that I'm comparing against. And so you can review the creation of the evaluation pane here and then submit your evaluation. Let's jump over to some evaluations that I've already completed. So I've run 2 different evaluations with different variants here on my flow. What I'm doing is I'm able to compare them. One second. And here you see the comparison and the different scores for the same metrics that we set up for the evaluation. So coherence, fluency, relevance, and groundedness. And you see here in the second variant, I actually configured those multiple data sources. The first one was comparing it against only one data source without the customer context. So therefore, the answers were less relevant and less grounded. And so you can see different indices and specific per instance comparisons that help you determine if you are ready to deploy a specific variant. So after I have chosen which evaluation which flow I'd like to deploy, let's bring that to production. So here within PromptFlow, you have a deploy wizard. And what you can do is it automatically populates your endpoint, your deployment, and all the goodness that you need to deploy at scale. Importantly here, you see automatically toggled as the ability to collect inferencing data collection. So that's your production data, which we will then analyze for you without looking at it. By without looking at it, I mean it is stored in your workspace blob store securely. Next is application insights, which is for operational metrics. So from here, I can create a deployment. Let's jump over to some deployments that have already been created. So within the deployment screen, you can first see your Azure OpenAI resources, such as GPT-3.5 or GPT-4, and the different deployments that I have here. So within it, you have your deployment attributes, and you can see your flow, which is the flow that we use to create this deployment, as well as the inputs and outputs. So in this case, let's chat with the bot. So here you see it's responding, giving good information about the specific shoes in the catalog, and it's referencing the documents, which is important. Now that I've done that, I'm going to show you a small detail that's happening under the hood. Within that data, we've enabled something called Model Data Collector. And in that, you can see and explore the data that is being collected here, and it's in a JSON lines format. So this is the input and the output folders. And I'll show you what that looks like, just for fun. So you see here the inputs is the query. I just asked it about the trail walker shoes. And it's valid JSON lines format. So when we collect lots of this, we then process it and provide evaluations against this same production data. So let's create a monitor. With this, I'm able to create a monitor against the exact same metrics that I chose earlier. And so in my flow, I have my query and my reply, my inputs and my outputs, and context. Again, this is the fetch documents. Now let's jump over to a monitor that is already completed. Here you see the operational metrics, specifically requests per minute that have been running. This shows you if your model is performant, and you can view more details in Azure Monitor. You can fully slice and dice the operational data, and there are a number of different things that you can look at here. Network collection, request latency, request per minute. Next, the good part is the monitoring signals. So we've run a generation safety and quality monitor under the hood for those same metrics. And what you see here is a passing rate or a failing rate. So this is the number of instances that have passed or failed that threshold. So what you can do if you'd like to dive deeper to diagnose any issues is you can open this up in Azure Machine Learning. And so here is the monitoring service that is also available in preview for tabular data scenarios. And you can see the details for that monitor as well as the schedule. So it's running on a regular basis. By default, I think it's Monday mornings, but you can define that yourself. And then the signals and any notifications. So here I see I have some relevance notifications and coherence notifications where my passing rate is pretty low. Let's dive deeper. Here you see, you would see a time series chart, but for this demo, I only have a few data points. But you can see, importantly, a histogram of the scores here. So the distribution of the data, and most importantly, the samples. You can dive even deeper. So for this, let's see, I have a low coherence score. I'm looking at the, okay, so if I say testing, it says the information is not available in the retrieved data. And so that's a low coherence score. And so for each of these, you have collected metrics for each that have failed the threshold. And so in this case, I'm asking, what are reviews saying about the Cozy Nights sleeping bag? And then it provides a completion on that. And same for relevance. So here you've seen, to recap, is the creation of a flow in prompt flow and prompts and mitigations that you can apply in the real world to ensure that it's staying in alignment with the behaviors that you've defined. Then you run an evaluation and you create a set of scores that you can then set baselines against. And then you have seen the creation of a deployment and monitoring of that in production. And what's important is you can take the collected production data and use that as the basis for your next evaluation. So you can constantly curate and iterate and improve your application in production. So that's everything for today. Happy to hand it back to you.
And we are back. Okay, that was an awesome demo. Let's have a look if we have any questions. I don't see we have any questions. But I do have a question because I was playing with this like yesterday to build a demo. Can we go back to how you set up one of these monitors and how that connects into the flow? Like, can you show how you get all those contexts, like the relevant documents in the monitor? I was struggling with that. For me, it only worked with like the 2 parameters.
I see. And I'm guessing it's the inputs and the outputs.
Exactly.
Understood. Yeah. So here's the prompt flow that we just discussed. You have your inputs, which is your query, and your outputs, which is the reply. And when you're designing this flow, you really need to keep this in mind. And so by default, you'll collect all of the outputs here, but you need to make sure that less important is the search intent, but the fetched documents. This is the documents that are being used for this groundedness evaluation. So the outputs of that need to be collected in your deployment. So let's go into the advanced settings here. You can confirm that the fetched documents are included in that response.
You have it there. Oh, that is super cool. So in those output documents, like I assume you go to vector search, look up the relevant documents, and then you get the content back. So you put all that content that you get back into one string and kind of define it as an output, which you later can give in the monitor, so that the evaluation will look in there and see if the answer is kind of grounded or relevant to the documents.
Exactly.
Cool.
So when you're creating your monitor, you will then select these same columns, and it's also useful in your evaluation.
Okay, I have something to do tonight.
Yeah, happy to debug with you.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, I don't see any more questions coming in. Is there anything you want to share before
I'll
we?
just tease that I'm very excited to share the next iteration of this. This is our MVP, and we have a lot of exciting work coming pretty soon.
Perfect. Okay, then we will call it a show. Thank you very much. And everyone who is watching, on the 12th of December, we will have the Global AI Conference coming up. That will be 12 hours of sessions in 2 tracks. Virtual will start in Australia and we'll move throughout the world, and we will end our tour in Seattle with over 24 sessions and more than 35 speakers from all over the world, touching a lot of subjects. So if you want to register for that, I will put on the link here. That will be globalai.community/conference. Register there and you will get a badge for attending. So thank you very much, everyone. And I wish you all a lovely continuation of your day.
Thanks, everyone.